My talk this morning, well, on the program, it's How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love Frederick Taylor. I changed that to the first person plural, How We Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love Frederick Taylor. When Frederick Winslow Taylor published Principles of Scientific Management in 1911, he did so with the sincere conviction that inefficiency posed a threat to the prosperity of America's businesses and to the livelihoods of American citizens. A mechanical engineer by trade, Taylor subscribed to the belief that what American enterprise needed were not better employees, but better ways to manage the labor of those employees. Taylor's confidence that scientific management could successfully mitigate industrial inefficiency was perhaps, in a way, a reflection of the bully optimism infusing America during Theodore Roosevelt's presidency in the decade just preceding the publication of Taylor's book. Eschewing the notion that some miraculous intervention could cure corporate America of the scourge of wasteful practices, Taylor viewed improving management as a problem that could be surmounted by altogether reconceptualizing work. Central to Taylor's concept was the systematic application of a systemic approach to jobs performed on the shop floor. By deconstructing industrial practices into constituent components, managers would be able to recognize inefficient patterns and then adjust those patterns to render them more efficient. Put simply, workflow could thus be reassembled into a timed choreography of precise movements culminating in consistently predictable outcomes. Contrary to what some observers contend, scientific management was likely not an inevitable consequence of the Industrial Revolution. After all, much of what scientific management proposed appeared to run counter to the accepted work practices and conditions characteristic of American enterprise in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The Industrial Revolution in America, following on the heels of the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain in the 1830s, clearly served as the backdrop for the elaboration of Taylor's theories and perhaps nurtured some of Taylor's fundamental notions. But the Industrial Revolution was not at the root of scientific management. As subversive as scientific management might have seemed at the time, the philosophy driving Taylor's prescriptions was by no means new. It is relatively easy to dismiss Taylor's work as an engineer's response to what might be labeled an engineering problem. Yet, Taylor's treatise combined elements of economic, social, and psychological theory, as well as engineering. Scientific management, when examined in the aggregate of inventions and innovations of the 19th and early 20th centuries, seemed quite in tune with the period's wholesale embrace of atomistic thinking. Atomism, a concept that can be traced to Greek antiquity, centers mostly on the notion that the universe is corpuscular, assembled from smaller, invisible particles, or atoms. Further, effects upon these atoms manifest themselves as changes recordable in the visible world. Atomism, therefore, is a philosophy concerned primarily with perception. Atomism argues that changes at the micro level engender and are perceived as changes at the macro level. Examples of atomism can be found in much of mathematics, modern chemistry, explanations of gravity and electrical phenomena, and germ theory, to name but a few. The mechanical technology of the 19th century, according to Marshall McLuhan, pushed atomization still further. In the early 1950s, another engineer, W. Edwards Deming, breathed new life into scientific management with the development of a promising tag team of management methods, total quality management, TQM, and continuous process improvement. The premise of Deming's approach was, say what you do and do what you say you do. At the skeletal level, TQM embodied scientific management. TQM, however, added two significant elements. First, the line workers themselves could participate in conceiving the microscopic choreography of their duties. Second, managers' work, too, would become subject to the same type of scrutiny as the efforts of their subordinates. Outputs would not merely be measured in terms of total productivity, but also to which degree outputs represented the result of efficiently handled throughputs. As a result, efficiency itself became atomized as each fraction of a percentage point shy of 100% triggered further deconstruction, reassessment, and recalibration of the entire work continuum, a process of continually improving the process. In this respect, continuous process improvement could be just another mystical quest modeled after Leibniz's notion of the best of all possible worlds. Leibniz believed that from among the infinite array of possible worlds, God has brought forth the best of those worlds. Perfection emerges from a reality constructed according to a pre-established order from which God can extract the optimal effect. Deming's work surfaced at a time, the dawn of the atomic age, when humankind beheld the invisible atom's visibly explosive power. Businesses in the US at first shunned Deming's system, whereas post-war Japan eagerly embraced TQM. What might have accounted for this difference in attitude? While the atom still remained a rather abstract concept in the minds of most Americans, the Japanese understood firsthand the power of paying attention to ways the seemingly invisible can yield powerful results. American enterprise would come to understand this corollary 2 decades later as Japanese industry unleashed upon the American marketplace its atomistic bomb of affordable, high-quality products spawned by rigorous application of the principles of TQM. Today, more than 100 years after initial publication of Principles of Scientific Management, the atomistic bias underpinning Frederick Taylor's ideas remains an integral part of this nation's commercial interests and the lives of its citizens. This is not necessarily a comforting thought, nor should it be. Although society continues to openly court atomization, we have to wonder whether this love affair of ours merely masks a utopian dream intent on ushering in the best of all possible worlds. Or is our liaison instead a Kantian nightmare? Insisting that work could be reduced to its constituent motions, scientific management distorted our concept of what is important to pay attention to. The system requires us to believe that the value of a process, 1, rests in the relationship of the parts to the process, and 2, this relationship is solely a means of coercing outcomes from that process. Moral judgments can be largely ignored since they do not easily fit into the bounded rationality of such an arrangement. There appears to be little room for the consideration of immaterial qualities, for in such a system, these qualities inject no further meaning into our understanding of the process. We thus have come to venerate the organization of information over the meaning of that information. The future will be quantified, shouts the headline of a recent Fortune interview with IBM CEO Bridget van Kralingen. The contemporary incarnation of atomization is metrics, the belief that we can measure almost anything, whether or not that effort seems truly worthwhile. Some business and government leaders would argue measurement fosters accountability. Nevertheless, Victoria McAvoy of Harvard Medical School contends, since it's so difficult to measure things that are worth measuring, questionable measures are used to satisfy demands for accountability. She further notes, metrics are chosen because they are measurable, not because they are proxies for excellence. We witness this preference, for instance, in the world of professional sports, where now $100,000 tracking systems are used on the court to quantify every movement of players in the NBA. In Major League Baseball, for example, the positioning of players on the field has become, in the words of the Wall Street Journal, a sophisticated science in which new metrics continue to shape the game. In my own field, public relations, and in advertising, there is an increasing reliance on so-called big data. Industry is scooping up and aggregating all sorts of little data about people's lifestyles, habits, and attitudes at unprecedented levels. Largely harvested from social media outlets, ever more atomized demographic and psychographic data are enabling marketers to narrowly target their persuasive messages in a manner inaccessible to organizations prior to widespread use of digital technologies. Business and government appear to be spending a lot of time and money discovering still more about us, albeit largely ignoring sticky ethical questions such probing raises. Reliance on big data is more than just a case of the ends justifying the means. The means have managed to overwhelm the ends. What is all that data worth? The Wall Street Journal recently pondered. Just days after that headline appeared, the newspaper observed, it's not just about ratings anymore. Broadcasters are gathering mounds of digital info about what viewers like. The problem is what to do with them. Are we to assume that them in the article refers to the mounds of data? It could just as well be the viewers. These days, you never know. Perhaps we need to reevaluate our long-standing dalliance with scientific management and atomization. Taylorism clearly has made its way into every corner of society, becoming what Neil Postman terms the scaffolding of the present-day American technopoly. Scientific management, like all such constructs, is a product of the imagination. However, there is a risk when we project products of imagination into and onto reality and unquestioningly consider such behavior sensible once and for all. Alfred Korzybski saw great peril in ideas that evade revision. Stuart Chase counsels, a good semantic discipline gives the power to separate mental machinery from tangible events, makes us conscious of abstracting, prevents us from peopling the universe with non-existent things. Thank you.